Looking for magic cards? At flipsidegaming.com you can now use the promo code LVD to get a 10% discount on orders over $10 while supporting the channel at the same time. Hello and welcome to another Magic Arena gameplay video. Today we are revisiting the blue-red Mirari Conjecture combo control deck that we've already covered in the past. It's a deck built around the 5 mana saga, the Mirari Conjecture. On the first chapter when we play it, we get to return target instant card from our graveyard to our hand. On the second chapter we get to return a sorcery card from our graveyard to our hand. And then on the third chapter, until end of turn, whenever we cast an instant or sorcery spell, we can copy it and choose new targets for the copy. So the goal of the deck is to win the game once we reach the third chapter of Mirari Conjecture by casting one big lethal Banefire for X equals 10, which doubled by Conjecture deals 20 damage to the opponent, which is usually enough to kill them. And we can also do the same with a Kicked Fight with Fire, which only costs us 9 mana to deal 10 damage to any number of targets, and doubled by Conjecture will deal 20 damage, killing the opponent. And then outside of Conjecture we also have one Primal Amulet, a 4 mana artifact that makes instants and sorceries 1 generic mana less to cast, which is pretty useful in a deck like this. And then whenever we cast an instant or sorcery, we can put a charge counter on Primal Amulet, and then if there are 4 or more charge counters, we can transform Primal Amulet into Primal Wellspring, which is a land that can tap for 1 mana of any color, and when that mana is spent to cast an instant or sorcery spell, copy that spell and choose new targets for that copy. So that's another way for us to copy our spells and cast a Lethal Fight with Fire or Banefire to close out the game. So the rest of the deck is pretty straightforward. We're a blue-red control deck, so you'll see some card draw, some counter spells. We do want a nice mix of instants and sorceries for the Mirari Conjecture, otherwise we won't get value out of the first 2 chapters, so that's also why we see cards like Divination as one of our card draw spells. So let's take a look at our entire deck list, starting out with our 1-drops, where we have 4 copies of Sheevan Fire that can deal 2 damage to a creature at instant speed, and if we pay the kicker cost of 4 generic mana, we can deal 4 damage instead, so nice versatile removal spell. And we want this over Shock for the most part because we're more interested in dealing with creatures and not as much burning out the opponent, because we're planning to burn them out with one giant Fight with Fire or Banefire, so dealing 2 incidental damage is not too relevant. Although of course Shock can be directed to Planeswalkers, which can sometimes be an upside over Sheevan Fire. Then moving on to our 2-drops, we've got 1 copy of Blink of an Eye that can return target non-land permanent to owner's hand, and if we pay the kicker cost of 1 and a blue, we can also draw a card, so nice versatile bounce spell, and also works nicely alongside the Mirari Conjecture, since after getting the first and second chapter we can decide to bounce our own Mirari Conjecture with Blink of an Eye, and then of course when we replay Mirari Conjecture we can return Blink of an Eye as our instant with the first chapter, so we can keep looping Blink of an Eye with Conjecture and make use of the first and second chapter and of course the kicker ability on Blink of an Eye to gain a ton of card advantage. And then when we're ready to win the game we can let the Conjecture hit the third chapter to cast that lethal Fight with Fire or Banefire. Then we also have 2 copies of Search for Azcanta as another important card draw engine in our deck. Can provide a bit of card selection early, flips into Azcanta the Sunken Ruin, and our entire deck is non-creature spells, so we're very likely to find something when we activate the Sunken Ruin. Then we also have 4 copies of Lava Coil as additional spot removal, pretty key against any recursive threat like Rekindling Phoenix. Then we've got some counter spells in the form of Syncopate, which for X and a blue can counter a target spell unless its controller pays X, and if that spell is countered it also gets exiled instead of being put in the graveyard, which can be pretty relevant against some of the jumpstart cards. And then of course we've got our Banefire, which we're often going to save as our finisher, can also of course go to Planeswalkers if those are an issue, and can also be used as spot removal if we don't have anything else. Then moving on, we've got 2 copies of Divination as additional card draw, and it's a sorcery, so that diversifies our types for Mirari Conjecture, which is pretty important. And then we've got some more counter spells in Sinister Sabotage, and we're playing this over something like Ionize, just because the Surveil one is a lot more valuable than 2 damage, since we're planning to win the game with a giant Fight with Fire or Banefire anyway. And then we've got 1 copy of Fiery Cannonade as one of our sweeper effects, dealing 2 damage to each non-pirate creature at instant speed, so this card is great against any of the go-wide creature decks. Then we've got 2 copies of Fight with Fire, which can deal 5 damage to target creature at sorcery speed, so we can use it as an early removal spell, but then in the late game we can use it as a way to finish out the game, dealing 10 damage with the kicker cost. And then at 4 mana we've got some more card draw in the form of Camerous Insight, letting us draw 2 cards at instant speed for 4 mana and also as Jumpstart, so pretty nice alongside our instant speed counter spells. And then we've got our Primal Amulet, our 3 copies of Mirari Conjecture, And then to top of our curve, we've got a Star of Extinction as an additional sweeper effect that can also deal with Planeswalkers, which is pretty important since our deck can be pretty weak to a resolved Planeswalker. And then 1 copy of Expansion Explosion as a pretty versatile card. Expansion can be nice alongside some of our spot removal spells, especially something like Fiery Cannonade can now deal 4 damage to all creatures instead of just 2. And then Explosion can be an additional finisher or card draw spell. And then our mana base, we've got a lot of lands since we are a pretty mana hungry deck. We've got 11 islands, 8 mountains, 4 steam vents, and 4 sulfur falls. So that's our deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. This is only a keep because we're playing 27 lands. Otherwise it would be pretty sketchy. But we're pretty likely to draw land within our next 2 draw steps. And then Divination can find more lands. And we'll be fine. Could have played Ascanta to play around Syncopate there. Opponent appears to be on the Temur Reclamation deck. Lands are good. So if they play Reclamation here, we're in trouble. Is that just a tap land? Don't have any counter spells, but we can pretend like we do. And the clock is ticking because their opponent has Niv Mizzet in their deck. Do have Banefire to kill it. It's not a perfect exchange. Really need a counterspell here. Not that it helps counter Niv Mizzet, but it feels like we're pretty far behind now. Could just play tap land and jumpstart Insight. Lava Coil can still answer Niv, but can probably just Banefire it instead. And I think we want to keep our lands. They do have Niv, sadly, so we're in trouble. At least Banefire is uncounterable, so they can't counter it. Well, this is painful. But realistically, any Niv Mizzet deck should beat us. Really just needed a Syncopate or Sabotage for the Reclamation. So we're probably dead to Expansion Explosion here. No, they're not doing any of the floaty shenanigans. So I guess we're not dead yet. No instant in the graveyard since we exiled the Insight. Gets negated. I guess we can actually get there if they have absolutely nothing in 2 turns here. So yeah, if they do nothing for 2 turns here, this would be a lethal fight with fire. But they probably have another counterspell in hand. We do suspect our opponent has a counterspell in hand. So the fight with fire plan's not going to work. So we might have to Divination to dig for an additional Conjecture. And I will fire it off now, even though of course we could double it next turn, but we're gonna try and double Fight with Fire. And they might counter this. Alright, another Conjecture's nice. So if our opponent doesn't find Expansion Explosion, we are threatening a lethal. Alright, that's a setback. Now we're 1 land short from a lethal Fight with Fire. I guess we'll get back Divination now. And at least we get to double it. At least this happens on cast. Could play another Conjecture. The sad thing here is that we don't get to draw into a counterspell to protect us. Finally drew Sabotage. So what do we discard? Sheevan Fires are bad. And then probably ditching a Steam Vents and a Mountain. And a Mountain. More. Another Mountain. Alright. Is this another Star of Extinction? Well, that's one way of stopping the combo. So we could blink of an eye the Conjecture, or we could just play another Conjecture at this point. But now I feel pretty safe, because they're down to 1 card. We can counter an Expansion Explosion, and we've got more Conjectures coming up. So I think we just let the 3rd chapter happen. So yeah, there's no window for us to bounce while we get the 3rd chapter, so it's either one or the other. And then we still have Sabotage backup. Alright, so feeling pretty good about things. Guess we'll get back Insights. Just needed to fade an Expansion Explosion or a second Niv Mizzet. And we did. But now we've got an answer to Expansion Explosion. Azcanta shouldn't matter too much here. Can always blink it if we want to. Get back a Banefire. I think I will blink Azcanta. Not let them dig. Don't think we need to kick it necessarily. Alright. That's fine. Chemister's not what we wanted to see, but I think we gotta counter the Expansion Explosion here instead of the Insight. Do they have enough mana to 5, 6, 7, 8? I think they're 1 mana short of casting a lethal explosion in response to us going for the Banefire. Although, let's see here. 1, 2, 3, 4. We've got 9 mana, so we can only Banefire for X equals 9. And if we go for a kicked Fight with Fire, then our opponent can actually copy it with Expansion. So it's actually an interesting spot here. Hopefully they just tap out for a giant explosion, we sabotage it, and then it's pretty easy from there. Alright. So this one we will sabotage. Yeah, it's actually interesting. Had they capped up Expansion Explosion, and we would have gone for the lethal fight with fire, they could have copied it, and their copy would have resolved first, so I think they would have killed us if they did. Unless we decided not to go for it, because we didn't have enough mana for Banefire, which they couldn't copy with Expansion Explosion. Alright, so they should be dead now. Alright. Well, did not think we were gonna win this game, but opponent bricked for a couple of turns. And yeah, we got there. Merfolk. Probably just gonna take one. Keep Sabotage for the high impact Merfolk. Like this here Kumena. Suppose we could even fire the Sneak. Or the Adept. I guess Adept is probably on average gonna deal more damage to us than the Sneak. But if we kill the Sneak, we prevent 2 damage now. Don't think we can afford to tap out for Primal Amulet here. Gotta wait until we have 6 mana so we can Amulet plus Sabotage. Sabotage also pretty helpful with Azcanta. So they're kind of baiting out a counterspell here with a Speaker. Probably gotta let that slide. There's scarier Merfolk they could play. Syncopate's not terrible. I think we just want to put it in the graveyard. Look for something like a Fiery Cannonade, more red removal. Insight's not bad either. So how many do we have in the graveyard so far? 4? I think we'll keep that one. And then hope they don't play anything too impactful. That's fine. I guess we should Insight in case we draw into a Shivan Fire. So now we could go Primal Amulets into Divination. Or keep up Sabotage. We are taking 6 a turn here, which is a lot. Next turn we do get to flip Azcanta. So it is an interesting spot. Probably gotta keep up Sabotage here. But I think we do want to get this Amulet down. And then next turn we can Divination. So we gotta find some removal spells here. Even Star of Extinction we could cast. Alright, that one can go. We'll transform. No Star of Extinction so far. Alright, that's a brick. So we could Chemisters for 3 mana. Try and find a Lava Coil. Or we could keep up Azcanta plus Sabotage. Try and find Star of Extinction and or Fiery Cannonade alongside another removal spell. Definitely got to keep up Sabotage. I guess Azcanta digs us deeper towards the Star of Extinction. But line of Insight into Lava Coil or Shivan Fire maybe lets us survive without finding a sweeper effect. Opponent does nothing. Probably don't need to Sabotage end of turn here, so we'll keep up red mana. Alright, Shivan Fire. Probably got a Shivan Fire now. Banefire, so how close are we to flipping this? 4 or more charge counters. So can we play double insight and then flip this and cast Banefire killing both creatures is a question. This is 6 mana, so we'll have 3 mana left. This will flip, and then we can Banefire for 3, copy it, and kill both creatures, so that should work. So let's do this. Discard Mountain. Double Lava Coil also works. So I guess it's slightly safer because then we get to keep up Sabotage in the process. Transform. Does cost us 2 mana now, but now we have Ascanta and Sabotage up. And then next turn we can go for the lethal Banefire. That's fine. And doesn't really matter here. Alright, so X equals 10, doubled by Primal Wellspring. Sweet. No blue mana, that's rough. Do have way more blue than red, so I don't think we can keep this. This end's also pretty awkward. Nothing to fuel the conjectures. Probably need to find cheap interaction before we keep lands on top. The rest. It's not the worst, I guess. They can know we drew the Steam Vents, doesn't really matter too much here. Life could matter. What's the general game plan? Doubling Fight with Fire or Banefire with Conjecture for the one-hit KO. And we managed to pull it off quite a few times already today. So we're looking for some divinations here essentially. Consecrate the Wellspring. They might have wanted to wait, so they probably are digging for lands pretty badly here. Otherwise they could have waited to exile something relevant for Conjecture. Even exiling an Insight would have been pretty good for them, but they didn't know about the Insight yet. Hero of Precinct 1. Alright, Shivan Fire is not bad. So we'll just Chemisters again here. Try and pull ahead on cards. It's totally fine. A Relentless Raptor, that's interesting. Going pretty deep for the multicolor cards for hero. It's going to hit us for 3 here. I think we do get Conjecture down. Return an Insight. Could also get back another Shivan Fire. Could also, of course, kick Shivan Fire to kill it. Could do it end of turn, keep up Syncopate. Want to get Conjecture going. There's no sorcery to get back at the moment, but I'm happy with another Insight. Sure. If the heroic reinforcements us, we're probably Shivan firing a token. Mortify that, sure. Got our value out of it. Opponent's down to 1 card in hand. So feels like we're in pretty good shape. Don't want to keep taking damage from the Raptor. If we kick Shivan Fire, we only get to keep up Syncopate for 2, so we probably have to take 3. And then end of turn the Shivan Fire. Unless we need to counter something. It's definitely counter-worthy. So I'm guessing we want to Syncopate instead of Sabotage. Because it's going to be easier to keep up Sabotage later in the game. Because our opponent has a lot of lands already. Alright, so now we can kick Shivan Fire and have Sabotage up. Challenger, I think we just counter here. Can put Banefire in the graveyard so we can get it back with Conjecture. Judith is pretty good too, but we can kill her with Shivan Fire right now. Appreciate the continued support. So how many lands do we have? 6, 7, 8, 9. So if we draw a land next turn, we can still only Banefire for 9. But our opponent is at 18, so it would be lethal. So it's looking good here. We can Chemisters, hope to hit a land drop, and then next turn cast a lethal Banefire. Let's counter Judith. And looks fine. Another Merfolk deck. Sure. Jade Lights. Ooh, another Mistbinder. This could hurt. So, can Syncopate for 2 if they don't have a land. Or we could Shivan Fire it. I think I would rather Syncopate and keep Shivan Fire. I think we'll Shivan Fire right now. Like, there's a chance they play another Mistbinder pre-combat and we would rather kill that instead. But they might also have like a River Herald Spoon for all we know. Don't really want to run into that. And without any Merfolk in play, Mistbinder's just a 2-2. Deep-Root Elite. Keeps on top. Alright, Sheevan Fire, not a bad draw here. Guess we'll pass the turn. Probably gonna Sheevan Fire the Branchwalker here. Should have maybe killed it before they attacked, just in case they're playing something weird like Chart, of course. So we're pretty stable here, and we're about to draw some cards. I think we do play the land, and I'm okay discarding the Banefire to the Chemisters, I think. Blink should buy us more time. And now we're just looking for Mirari Conjecture. More card draw is fine. Could also main phase in case we find an Azcanta. Alright. Don't hit our spot here. Opponent stop decking. And we're gonna see quite a few cards. Gaia's Blessing, sure. There's Azcanta. Pretty full graveyard. I think we'll keep that. Just looking for conjectures. Could have also main phased the Azcanta activation to find Conjecture. Would have still had the mana to play it. Amulet's good too. I guess it wasn't even all that worth it to play the other Azcanta here, when we can spend our mana on Insights instead. I think I'll prioritize Azcanta over Insight despite amulets, just to try and find Conjecture. Alright, they do have a boon. Sure. They can have their big Jade Light. And I'm just gonna use Azcanta. Alright, I guess we'll take a fight with fire, which we can cast for 20 damage pretty soon. So how much mana do we have? This has 1 counter. So not quite enough to kill them this turn, I don't think. So let's main phase the Chemisters. Should be pretty trivial to win the game from here. Guess we'll pass the turn for now. And then next turn we can flip Amulets and cast a lethal Find with Fire. Sweet. Alright, so the Merfolk matchup seems winnable. If they played enchantment that makes a 1/1 hexproof token whenever they cast a Merfolk. That's definitely a card that could pose a few issues if they resolve it, since we don't have an easy way to interact with the hexproof tokens outside of 1 Cannonade and 1 Star of Extinction. But if they have a fair draw and we draw some cheap interaction, we can usually stabilize in time and then take over the game. But for now, I want to thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day. I also want to thank all my patrons for being part of the channel, and you can become a patron yourself today and decide the topic of future videos over at patreon.com/LegenVD.